Hello and welcome to another video. As usual, my name is Jeffrey and you're welcome to Inquisitive Universe, where we talk smartphone tech and basically happenings in the tech world, right? So like I said, this is a viewer-oriented channel and my aim is to try as much to break these technical terms down for like the average user to understand. It's really not a PhD science, it's basically just tech. It's easy, right? So today I want to talk about why RAM size is overrated, because everywhere you go, I don't understand. This is not 2018. This is something that ought to have died out a long time ago, but a lot of people still strongly believe that RAM size, rather bigger RAM size, equates to better smartphone performance or better processing performance, or like basically the phone with the biggest RAM has the best processor. And while sometimes there's a correlation, right? Because some of the best phones out there with the best processors tend to use some of the biggest RAM sizes. Like you'd see 12 gig RAM, for example, on Samsung or Xiaomi flagships, or Oppo or Vivo flagships, 8 gig RAM, 12 gig RAM, and so on and so forth. But that's not necessarily always the case. Correlation doesn't always equal causation. Their flagships too, they tend to have the best specs. RAM size has nothing to do with how well those phones perform. So I want to look at what RAM is now, and then what it does, and why sizes of RAM have nothing to do with performance at all. So as I have explained in my previous videos, you may want to check those out, because I think when I make my videos like this, I'd like it to be like step by step, so that like if you follow up, should I say religiously, it makes things easier to understand as you get along. Because I think most people sometimes just want to jump into tech without any sort of foundation whatsoever. It's why many people think tech is hard. In reality, it isn't. If you're not very well grounded in the subject, you may want to go back and work your way up. Makes it so much clearer. Now, RAM itself is a type of memory. It's a very type of fast memory, although volatile meaning once you turn it off, it loses all its data. But it's a type of like really fast memory that sits in between the CPU cores on the SoC and the internal storage, because most of your apps and your games are stored in your internal storage. So anytime you want to play a game or load an app, data has to be fetched from the internal storage. But the internal storage for most parts, is actually slower than the CPU cores. CPU cores are much faster. So if the CPU requests information from the internal storage and has to go back and forth, to get data from the internal storage, most of the time the CPUs will just be idling away whilst the internal storage is trying to sort itself out. So in order to make your processor, or rather your processing performance on your smartphone better and faster, the RAM is there in between the CPU cores and internal storage. So when the CPUs fetch an app, for example, like a game, it puts it inside the the random access memory, now the RAM. So it's much closer, and then both of them, they are in tune with each other, and it works faster. So your games play fine and snappy. And if that's where all your apps go, because it's not just for the CPUs to work with now. The RAM doesn't only provide a platform for the CPUs to work with. It also provides space for the CPU to keep several apps, so that you can seamlessly switch in between them. Are you playing a game right now and a call comes in? Well, the app for the calls is in the RAM itself, so all the CPU has to do is just switch over, and then you take your call, and then the game can wait. So as soon as you're done with your call, you can switch back to your game and then continue playing. A mail comes in, the game can wait, you can switch over, check your mail, reply it if need be, and then you switch back to your game. So basically that's what the RAM is for. Now, the bigger the RAM size, the more apps can fit in the RAM. The smaller the RAM size, the less apps can fit. So maybe you have a small RAM size, like say 4 gig. I cannot believe I'm saying 4 gig RAM is small. But hey, it's the world that we live in. I remember once upon a time when 4 gig RAM was mind-boggling, right? Because was that not 2015, 2016? I had a phone with 512 megabytes of RAM. And the first time I saw a 2 gig, 3 gig RAM phone, those were on flagships, and it blew my mind. I was like, RAMs can get that big? And now I have a 6 gig RAM device, and 4 gig RAM is small. Wow. Right, so let's proceed. So the bigger the RAM size, the more apps can fit. The smaller the size, the less apps can fit. So on a 2 gig RAM device now, you can have less apps in there, 2 or 3, before like the RAM says, you know what, I'm full, I can't take any more. Right, on a 4 gig RAM device or a 6 gig RAM device, there's more space to fit in more apps. Now that's just what the size is for, the ability to be able to fit more apps onto RAM for the CPUs to work with. That is more apps to multitask with. That means you can open more apps on your tabs, and then you can just simply be switching through all of them. That's what RAM size is for. it has nothing to do with how powerful a phone is, because RAM size has nothing to do with processing. The strength of the CPUs are what determines how powerful a phone is. A processor now like the Helio G25 now, with all Cortex A53 CPU cores, will not be as powerful as a Snapdragon 680 with Cortex A73 cores. It is not going to be as powerful as that one. It is also not going to be as powerful as a CPU with A73, A75, A76, A77, A78 CPU cores, regardless of RAM size. RAM size is only a platform for apps to be kept so that your CPU can work on them. It has absolutely nothing to do with RAM size. The strength of the phone has nothing to do with RAM size. The underlying processor that does the processing is what you should be checking. Because I have seen people pick a 4 gig RAM device with Cortex A53 CPUs or A55 CPUs over a 3 gig RAM device with Cortex A73 or A75 CPUs, and you ask them why, they'll tell you, hey, it's the RAM, the phone with less RAM will not be as powerful as the one with more RAM. And the painful part is that these people make up the majority and they think they know it all, and if you try to reason with them, they drown you out with white noise. So for the most part, I've usually stopped trying to get myself into such conversations because it never really ends well. They're just annoying. But the takeaway is that RAM size is only a platform for apps to be kept so that the CPUs can switch and work with them. RAM size has nothing to do with processor performance. It is the CPU cores, the type of CPU cores, or the type of SoC that you have, the type of processor that is underlying the RAM working, is what determines a smartphone performance. RAM size has absolutely nothing to do with it. It should not even be in the conversation at all, right? It should not. So anytime somebody tries to tell you that, this phone has a bigger RAM, go for it, you should give them a side eye. Like, what are you talking about, mate? Seriously, what are you talking about? You don't know what you're talking about. Get out here, mate. Really, you should tell them, because it's not just amateurish. It's ignorant. I would not even say misleading. It's totally ignorant. RAM size has nothing to do with processor performance. Processor type has everything to do with processor performance. What RAM size gives you is a larger playing field for you to be able to have bigger apps running in memory without fears of any of them being force closed, or having a lot of apps to switch around and multitask with. And that's for that. So as usual, my name is Jeffrey. Please subscribe to the channel, like if this video was helpful to you, like it. If you've ever had this conversation with your friends, please do well to share if it's not too much of a bother. My name is Jeffrey, as I said before, and I will be signing out.